Hello, brothers and sisters. Thanks for joining me again today. I saw yesterday that some maniac tried to blow up a cathedral in Washington, D.C. There was supposed to be some kind of event honoring the start of the United States Supreme Court. So let's see what happened here. Here's a story out of the New York Post about it. Lefty maniac threatened to detonate tent filled with 200 explosives outside D.C. church hosting Supreme Court justices. That would have been crazy if somebody had blown up the Supreme Court. I cannot even imagine trouble that would have caused in this country. It would have been nuts. A hate-filled New Jersey man arrested before the annual Red Mass in Washington, D.C. had at least 200 explosives in a tent outside and a notebook declaring hatred for ICE and the Supreme Court justices due to arrive at the Catholic Church, new court documents show. Louis Jerry, 41, had pitched his tent on the steps of the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle and allegedly told cops who approached him, "You might want to stay back and call the federales." Okay, so this guy was just crazy. I have explosives, according to a filing obtained by the Washington Post. During the attempted negotiations with officers, he allegedly handed them a notebook in which he espoused the hatred for the Catholic Church, Supreme Court justices, Jews, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, according to the documents. I think it's clear that this guy is left-wing, even though we keep being told all the violence in America is on the right wing. I keep seeing these stories. I think it's a 90-10 issue. 90% of the violence is coming out of the left. There are some knuckleheads on the right too, but it's mostly on the left. And this guy, he's probably crazy. It's probably going to turn out that this is a mental health issue that hasn't been properly addressed. And so again, what I always say when I see these crazy stories is we need to be identifying people with mental health issues, and then we need to get them away from the general public and get them treatment instead of just sweeping it under the rug with these soft on crime policies. I am sure we're going to find out that there were signs that this guy was mentally ill and he just skated under the radar. The cathedral was preparing to celebrate its annual Red Mass, which marks the beginning of the Supreme Court's term, when police discovered homemade explosives inside Jerry's green tent on the property. So he actually pitched a tent on the grounds of the cathedral. That sounds crazy. Several Supreme Court of the United States justices typically attend the service, but stayed away as the security threat unfolded, according to the Catholic Standard, the official newspaper of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Washington. The Metropolitan Police Department called the bomb squad on Jerry, who refused to leave the tent and continued to tell cops he had bombs, the Washington Post reported. People walked to the Shrine of the Sacred Heart at the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle during the first reflection procession on Sunday. Looks like they've got altar girls at this place. For full disclosure, I used to be an altar boy back in the day, and I always thought it was weird when I got to a church that altar girls, because that was beyond my comprehension at the time as a little kid. But I think it's fine now. There's no problem with altar girls. But I had never met one for the longest time as a child. Then all of a sudden, altar girls start springing up, and I was like, this is strange. "Do you want me to throw one out? I'll test one on the streets," he asked the sergeant speaking with him, adding that he had 100+ explosives. This man was very lucky he wasn't killed. If I'm a police officer or if I'm National Guard, as we can see in this picture, there's a lot of National Guards still in Washington, D.C. As soon as he said he had a bomb, there's a high probability I would have just shot him. On these National Guard troops, just FYI, originally Democrats were very much against the National Guard going into Washington, D.C., but it is true, it is one of the most unsafe cities in America. I think for gun crime, it was number 2 for gun crime. I think Baltimore was number 1. I think Chicago was 3, but tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what I recall. But Trump sent the National Guard in, and it was protested by the mayor and a lot of city officials and Democrats in the federal government. And they did clean the city up. But then the mayor actually realized that this was good because they were cleaning up crime. So the mayor has stopped fighting it and has said, yeah, keep the National Guard here as long as you want, Trump, if it lowers crime. And actually, that is the right answer. Fighting Trump just to fight Trump makes no sense. If the mission is lowering crime, who can be against that? And I know it's embarrassing because these are Democrat-led cities that are mismanaged, but for the people in Washington, D.C., don't you want less crime? I think all the public opinion polls have shown that actual D.C. residents are fine with the National Guard because they're lowering crime and everyone can see it. So thank you, South Carolina National Guard, for being there and helping out. And it's the same for the other cities. I know they're fighting him in Portland. They're fighting him in Chicago right now. It's a little harder for him to do it in those cities. He doesn't have as much control as he does in Washington, D.C., but I do expect he will get his way and be able to deploy the National Guard in these cities to protect the federal officers that are mostly doing immigration enforcement work, which is completely legal. And I think the courts will eventually uphold that it's completely legal what he's doing there. It's just activist liberal judges that are stopping him. And honestly, I believe it's unconstitutional for them to stop him. So at some point, he might just say is enough and just ignore the courts. And I would actually be fine with that if the courts are stopping him from protecting federal officers and the police won't do the job. And I did a story the other day where police were told in Chicago to not help other officers when they radioed in that they were in distress. That's been huge blowback for the city of Chicago. It's been a huge embarrassment for the whole police force there because police officers don't do that. When officers are in trouble, you go help them. That's like the unwritten rule. I wouldn't be surprised if the chief of patrol or even the police chief of Chicago didn't get fired. Police forces all over the country and members of the force in Chicago are calling that out as wrong. But let's get back to this story. In an effort to de-escalate, a sergeant agreed to read what Jerry had written in a notebook, which Jerry handed over through a flap in the tent. Okay, so the police tried to de-escalate. Maybe they didn't have a clear shot of him. The notebook was titled, Written Negotiations for the Avoidance of Destruction of Property via Detonation of Explosives, according to the document. Yeah, so this guy was crazy. The sergeant opened the tent flap fully after noticing a butane lighter and another object in his hand, which outraged Jerry, who then reached into a bag and told her, all right, if you want to do it, we'll do it now. Yeah, they keep showing pictures of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett because it was a Catholic cathedral and she's Catholic. He proceeded to pull out multiple capped vials containing yellow liquid and explosives taped to them and told her to step away or there's going to be deaths. Police retreated and formed a perimeter. He was handcuffed after a brief tussle shortly afterward when he got out of the tent to urinate on some trees. So yeah, the guy's just crazy. His massive cache of devices was seized by the bomb squad and sent to the FBI for testing. Some of the glass vials contained nitromethane, a common homemade explosive that was used in the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, according to Washington Post. Others were modified bottle rockets with aluminum foil heads and treated in a pyrotechnic solution, records show. The devices appeared fully functional, authorities said in court documents. Okay, so these were some real explosives. Jerry faces 8 charges, including manufacture or possession of a weapon of mass destruction in furtherance of a hate crime. A judge has ordered he be held without bail. Good. Yeah, I think this guy's definitely crazy. I'm glad they caught him and stopped him before he did any damage. And again, I just go back to we need better mental health resources in this country. We need to identify these people that are mentally ill and get them treatment. And we need to get them off the streets. We need to open up the loony bins again. I'm all for if a judge decides that there is enough evidence that you are mentally incompetent and a danger to the public, that they revoke your gun rights. 100% fine with that. I don't think crazy people should have guns. Now, it's a slippery slope. I want it to be a high standard where the judge needs real evidence. Otherwise, what ends up happening is anti-gun folk just say everyone's crazy and try to take away everyone's guns rights. No, I think this guy should get due process. And I think, yes, I definitely think his gun rights should be revoked and he should get mental health treatment. And perhaps he should go to jail. I don't know. We'll see what he gets. Hey, let me know what you guys think about this. Like and subscribe if you do. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Thanks. Bye.